The first time Jorvan saw Noah flinch, it was over something as minor as a paper cut. The human had cursed under his breath, pressing his thumb against the small wound, and muttered something about how annoying it was. Jorvan, like the rest of the alien students, had taken this as confirmation of what they already assumed: humans avoided pain at all costs. Pain, after all, was a universal deterrent. Among Jorvan species, the Syxtari, injuries were rare and always treated with immediate regeneration therapy. Their skin could seal most wounds within minutes, and they saw no reason to engage in anything that hurt them unless absolutely necessary. So when Noah yelped after stubbing his toe on the dormitory doorframe, Jorvan had turned to their instructor, Volek, and said, "See, even minor pain causes them distress. Humans are fragile." Noah, still wincing, had shot him a look. "I'm not fragile, man. It just hurts." Volek, an elder Syxtari with deep indigo skin, hummed in thought. Perhaps pain is a greater deterrent for humans than it is for us. That had settled the matter. Or so Jorvan thought. It wasn't until weeks later, in the shared study hall, that the topic came up again. Noah had been rubbing his shoulder absent-mindedly, looking at something on his tablet, when one of their fellow students, Zilm, asked, "Why do you keep doing that? Is your arm injured?" Noah glanced up. "Nah, just sore. I got a tattoo yesterday." Jorvan frowned. "A tattoo?" Noah nodded. "Yeah, a design inked into my skin." Zilm's eyes widened. "You willingly allowed someone to wound you?" Noah blinked at them, as if realizing how that must have sounded. "Well, yeah. It's not really a wound, though. It's just a needle injecting ink under the skin. It stings, but it's not that bad." Jorvan exchanged a look with Zilm. "You allowed a needle to repeatedly puncture your flesh. For decoration." "Essentially, yeah. The Syxtari in the room fell silent. Volek, who had been reviewing assignments across the room, finally looked up. "You subjected yourself to unnecessary pain." Noah shrugged, but there was an edge to his voice. "It's not unnecessary to me. I wanted it, so I got it." Jorvan leaned forward. "But you said pain is unpleasant for humans. You avoid it when possible." "Yeah, when it's pointless," Noah said. "But this wasn't pointless." Zilm's brow ridges furrowed. "How?" Noah hesitated. "It's personal. Tattoos can mean things. Mine does." The Syxtari still looked unsettled. Jorvan couldn't stop picturing the needle puncturing Noah's skin over and over again, and Noah just sitting there, letting it happen. He had seen Noah recoil from a hot beverage that was slightly too warm. And now he was claiming that he had voluntarily endured something far worse. Volek studied him. "Would you say this pain was enjoyable?" Noah scoffed. "No, it hurt." "And yet you endured it for an aesthetic outcome."
Yeah.
Jorvan narrowed his eyes. "That does not make sense." Noah sighed, rubbing his face. "Look, you guys don't have tattoos, right?" "No Syxtari does," Volek confirmed. "Right, so maybe it seems weird to you. But humans do this. It's normal for us." Zilm still looked disturbed. "You mean there are more humans who do this?" "Millions," Noah said. Jorvan couldn't believe what he was hearing. All of them willingly undergo pain.
Yeah.
No anesthetic. Sometimes, but most don't bother. Jorvan stared. "That is deeply unsettling." Noah rolled his eyes. "You guys are acting like I cut off a limb." "To us, this is not far removed from that," Zilm said. The room lapsed into silence. Jorvan tried to understand. He truly did. But everything he had observed about Noah so far contradicted this. Humans complained about pain. They flinched at minor injuries. They recoiled from discomfort. And yet Noah had allowed himself to be stabbed repeatedly with a needle for no functional reason. "Can we see it?" Zilm finally asked. Noah hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve. The skin on his upper arm was still red and slightly swollen, but the black ink design stood out clearly. It was a series of interlocking geometric shapes, with a single line running through the center. Jorvan tilted his head. What does it mean? Noah hesitated again, then looked away. It's personal. Ziln's eyes flicked between the tattoo and Noah's face. But it was worth the pain. Yeah, Noah said quietly. Jorvan didn't know what to say to that. The conversation ended soon after, but the tension lingered. Jorvan kept glancing at Noah's arm, trying to reconcile what he thought he knew about humans with this new information. Pain was supposed to be avoided. It was supposed to be something that indicated danger, something to be prevented. And yet Noah had chosen it. Jorvan didn't understand, but he intended to. Jorvan had spent the next few days observing Noah more closely, trying to make sense of what he had learned. The human's behavior remained as contradictory as ever, grumbling when he stubbed his fingers on the edge of a desk, yet laughing when he accidentally burned his tongue on hot food. The inconsistency gnawed at him. The opportunity to investigate further came when their group was assigned to a practical exercise in environmental adaptation. The Academy had a specialized chamber that simulated various planetary conditions, designed to test how different species handled extreme environments. Their task was to work together to navigate a simulated landscape that could shift from scorching heat to bitter cold in moments. Noah arrived wearing his standard Academy uniform, sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than Jorvan expected for an exercise that could involve significant discomfort. The rest of the Syxtari students had already adjusted their outer layers, ensuring their temperature-regulating garments were secured. As the simulation began, the temperature in the room climbed rapidly, mimicking the arid conditions of a desert world. Jorvan adjusted his internal hydration levels, a natural ability of his kind, while Ziln and the others moved more slowly to conserve energy. Noah, however, broke into a sweat almost immediately. Jorvan expected him to complain, but instead Noah exhaled sharply and muttered something about it just being like summer back home. The temperature continued to rise. The Syxtari, whose physiology allowed them to withstand high heat without much discomfort, monitored Noah closely. His skin was visibly damp, his breathing slightly heavier, but he remained upright, focused. Jorvan finally asked why he wasn't stopping to regulate his body temperature. Noah wiped the back of his neck and shrugged. Sweating is how my body cools itself. It's not fun, but it works. Ziln's brow furrowed. So you are actively losing water. Yeah, that's how we handle heat. Jorvan assessed him carefully. Losing water in such conditions would be dangerous for most species. Yet Noah accepted it as a normal function. The simulation shifted abruptly, plunging the environment into frigid temperatures. The Syxtari adjusted their metabolic processes, their skin tightening to conserve heat, while Noah immediately shivered. Jorvan expected him to withdraw, to request additional insulation, but instead, Noah rubbed his arms and muttered something about it not being the worst cold he'd felt. The human's body visibly reacted to the cold. His skin developed small bumps, his hands tucked into his sleeves, but he did not stop moving. Ziln finally asked how he was able to continue functioning. Noah flexed his fingers. I just have to keep moving. My body will warm itself up. Jorvan considered this. You mean your body actively generates more heat? Yeah, shivering helps with that. The Syxtari exchanged glances. They had never encountered a species that allowed itself to experience both extremes of temperature without a natural resistance. The idea of willingly enduring discomfort to adapt was foreign to them. No one noticed their expressions. You guys don't deal with temperature changes like this. Jorvan shook his head. Our bodies regulate without discomfort. Noah exhaled, breath visible in the cold air. Must be nice. Ziln hesitated. But if your body suffers in both heat and cold, why have your people not developed external adaptations? Noah shrugged. We do, sometimes. We wear warm clothes when it's cold, light clothes when it's hot. But sometimes you don't have that option, so you just deal with it. Jorvan studied him, noting the way Noah's body shivered involuntarily, the way he seemed to accept the sensation rather than resist it. You experience discomfort, yet you do not stop. Noah inhaled deeply and exhaled through his nose. Yeah. The simulation ended, and the temperature returned to normal. Noah relaxed, stretching his arms as his body adjusted. The Syxtari, however, remained unsettled. Zilm finally voiced the thought that had been forming in Jorvan's own mind. You do not avoid pain. You endure it. Noah blinked, as if the statement had never occurred to him. Then he let out a short laugh. I guess so. Jorvan processed this revelation. The human had reacted to pain when it happened, but he had not avoided it entirely. His kind did not eliminate discomfort, they simply continued through it. It was a deeply unsettling concept. Yet as Jorvan looked at Noah, he realized it was not a flaw. It was a function, a deliberate choice. And that, more than anything, made him question everything he had assumed about humans. Jorvan had always believed that pain was a signal to stop, an indication that something was wrong. But the more he observed Noah, the more he realized that humans operated under an entirely different set of rules. The tattoo had been the first shock, the environmental simulation the second. Now, he was beginning to suspect that pain, for humans, was not just something to be endured, it was something they actively engaged with. His suspicions were confirmed when he overheard Noah talking to another human student, a second year named Elise. They were in the communal study hall, and Jorvan had been reviewing an assignment when snippets of their conversation drifted toward him. Noah, leaning against the table, was recounting something animatedly. Elise laughed. Yeah, but that's nothing compared to when I broke my wrist last year. You ever had a bone set without painkillers? Jorvan's mind stalled. Noah shook his head. Nope, but I did dislocate my shoulder once. Had to pop it back in myself. Elise winced. That's brutal. Jorvan's pen slipped from his fingers. He turned slowly. You did what? The two humans looked at him. Noah blinked. Oh, yeah, I dislocated my shoulder once. Had to put it back. Jorvan stared. You inflicted further pain upon yourself intentionally. Noah made a face. I mean, yeah, but only because leaving it out would have been worse. Elise nodded. Yeah, sometimes you have to do that. I had to reset my own finger once. It sucked. Jorvan had the distinct sensation that his understanding of reality was unraveling. You mean to say humans willingly cause themselves pain in order to prevent greater pain? Noah and Elise exchanged a glance. Well, when you put it like that, yeah, Noah admitted. Jorvan pressed his hands against the table, trying to grasp the logic. But pain is supposed to indicate harm. You should avoid it. Elise shrugged. Not always. Sometimes pain is just part of fixing something. Jorvan looked between them. And you do this often. Noah hesitated, then gestured vaguely. Not on purpose, but when it happens, yeah, humans just deal with it. Jorvan sat back, stunned. Noah, perhaps sensing his distress, exhaled. Look, I get that this is weird for you, but humans don't have rapid healing like some species do. If something goes wrong, sometimes the only solution is to push through the pain and fix it manually. Elise nodded. And sometimes it's just part of life. You ever heard of physical therapy? Jorvan shook his head. It's rehabilitation after an injury, she explained. A lot of it involves pushing through pain to rebuild strength. Jorvan tried to process this. You deliberately engage in painful activity to recover. Yeah, Noah said. If you don't, the injury could heal wrong, and then you'd be worse off. Jorvan leaned back, staring at them. You subject yourselves to pain as a form of healing. Elise smiled wryly, pretty much. Jorvan had no response to that. Later, when he recounted the conversation to Zilm, the other Syxtari simply shook his head. This is deeply unsettling. Jorvan nodded. And yet, it explains much. Zilm considered this. Perhaps humans do not view pain as an absolute deterrent. Perhaps they see it as a process. Jorvan thought about Noah's tattoo, the way he had endured the environmental test, the The way he had spoken so casually about resetting his own shoulder. Pain for humans was not an end, it was a step. For the first time in his life, Jorvan wondered if perhaps his own understanding of pain had been incomplete. Jorvan had begun to suspect that there was no logical limit to human tolerance for discomfort. He had thought he understood the extent of their endurance, but every time he believed he had reached the boundary of what made sense, Noah revealed yet another baffling behavior. The latest revelation came during a group training session in the Academy's zero-gravity chamber. It was designed to simulate environments without planetary pull, essential for species that would operate in deep space. For the Syxtari, who relied on their internal equilibrium to maintain orientation, the lack of gravity was mildly disorienting but manageable. Noah, however, reacted in a way that neither Jorvan nor Zilm expected. As soon as the artificial gravity disengaged, the group floated freely. Most of the Syxtari stabilized themselves quickly, using handholds along the walls. Noah, on the other hand, twisted mid-air, overshot his intended movement, and collided with the chamber's ceiling. The impact was audible. Jorvan winced. He expected Noah to recoil, to pause and assess the damage. Instead, the human let out a noise that was somewhere between a grunt and a laugh. "Okay," Noah muttered, adjusting his position. "That was bad." Zilm, eyes wide, gestured at him. "You struck your head." Noah rubbed the side of his skull where it had made contact. "Yeah, didn't mean to. It's fine." Jorvan observed him carefully. "Are you not injured?" Noah shook his head. "Nah, just knocked into it. Happens." "Happens," Zilm repeated. Noah shrugged, then made another attempt at moving, pushing off a nearby surface. This time he overcorrected, twisting too much and smacking his shoulder against a metal railing. He grunted again, but instead of stopping, he adjusted his approach and tried a third time. Jorvan turned to Zilm. "This is intentional, is it not?" Zilm's expression was unreadable. "I do not know." Noah, now stabilizing himself on a handhold, exhaled. "Okay, I think I got it." Jorvan drifted closer. "You repeatedly subjected yourself to impact until you adapted." Noah looked at him, confused. Yeah? That's how you learn." Jorvan processed this. "You mean you deliberately endured repeated injury to improve your control?" Noah frowned. "I wouldn't call it injury, just bumps." Zilm interjected. "But you continued despite discomfort." Noah gave them both a strange look. "Well, yeah. How else would I figure it out?" Jorvan exchanged a glance with Zilm. Most species in the Academy would have paused, reassessed, and adjusted their movements before making another attempt. Noah had simply thrown himself at the problem, absorbing the consequences until he succeeded. Jorvan turned back to him. "You did not stop to analyze your approach before trying again." Noah scratched his head. "I mean, I kind of did, but sometimes you just have to go for it and adjust as you go." Zilm looked unsettled. "That is not an efficient process." Noah grinned. "Maybe not, but it works." Jorvan thought back to everything he had learned so far. The tattoo, the environmental endurance, the resetting of bones, and now this humans did not avoid pain. They did not even merely endure it. They seemed to treat it as an obstacle to push through, a necessary cost for improvement. After the session, as they exited the chamber, Jorvan noticed Noah rolling his shoulder. "You are still in discomfort," Jorvan observed. Noah waved a hand. "It'll go away. Why do you not rest it?" Noah gave him a puzzled look. "Because I don't need to." Jorvan was silent for a moment. "You do not consider minor pain to be a reason to stop." Noah exhaled. "Look, if it was serious, I'd deal with it. But a little soreness doesn't mean I should stop moving. If anything, moving helps." Jorvan tilted his head. "You believe activity aids recovery?" "Yeah. If you stop every time something hurts a little, you don't get stronger." Zilm whispered something in Syxtari that Jorvan suspected was an expletive. Jorvan, meanwhile, felt the last of his certainty unravel. Humans, it seemed, did not merely endure discomfort, they sought it out, adapted through it, and grew from it. And that, more than anything, was what made them incomprehensible. Jorvan had begun cataloging human behaviors in a private file, attempting to find patterns in what seemed like a chaotic approach to discomfort. He had stopped expecting logical consistency, but he still wanted to understand. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when Noah invited him and Ziln to observe a martial arts demonstration. At first, Jorvan had assumed it would be an exhibition of controlled movement, perhaps a demonstration of balance or coordination. He was wrong. The event took place in one of the Academy's training halls, where two human students faced each other on a padded mat. As the match began, Jorvan quickly realized that this was not a theoretical exercise. It was a direct contest of physical endurance and force. The participants struck each other repeatedly, grappling, twisting, and countering with practiced movements. Each time one of them was thrown to the ground, they got back up. Each time a strike landed, they absorbed the impact and adjusted. It was not a fight in the sense of hostility, but it was undeniably brutal. Jorvan turned to Noah in disbelief. They are harming each other. Noah, arms crossed, nodded. Yeah, that's the point. Ziln's skin darkened in alarm. And this is acceptable. Noah glanced at them. It's controlled. They're trained for this. Jorvan struggled to reconcile what he was seeing. But they are in pain. Noah exhaled. Probably, but that's part of training. You learn how to take hits, how to keep going. Jorvan stared at the match. One of the fighters stumbled from a particularly hard impact, but instead of retreating, they gritted their teeth and re-engaged. He turned back to Noah. Pain does not deter them. Noah hesitated. It does, to a point. But if you stop every time you get hurt, you never improve. Ziln's voice was quiet. You train yourselves to endure suffering. Noah's expression was unreadable. We train ourselves to handle it. Jorvan did not speak for a long time. When the match ended, both fighters shook hands and exchanged words that seemed almost casual, despite the bruises forming on their skin. Noah nodded toward them. See? They're fine. Jorvan looked at him. You believe this is beneficial? Noah met his gaze. Yeah, pain teaches you what you can handle. Ziln's posture remained stiff, and if you cannot. Noah was quiet for a moment. Then you learn how to recover. Jorvan absorbed that. As they left the training hall, he found himself thinking back to every moment he had questioned Noah's choices. The tattoo, the environmental endurance, the injuries humans reset themselves, the reckless adaptation in zero gravity, it all led to this. Humans did not merely endure pain. They accepted it as part of progress. For the Syxtari, pain was a signal to stop, to avoid harm. For humans, pain was a tool. Jorvan finally understood. As they walked back toward their dormitories, Ziln broke the silence. I do not believe I will ever comprehend this. Jorvan glanced at Noah, then back at Ziln. I do not believe we need to. Noah raised an eyebrow. You done being weirded out by humans? Jorvan considered that, then shook his head. No, but I accept that I will never fully understand. Noah grinned. That's fair. Jorvan looked up at the Academy towers, the stars beyond them, and let out a slow breath. He had spent so much time trying to make sense of human resilience, but perhaps the point was that it did not need to make sense, it simply was. And somehow, that was enough.